in your perspective, and I think, again, to inform the discussion, what would be the aspects that inform your decision to call a timeout inside your specific context in futsal, basketball, and handball? What aspects would you consider key to inform your decision about asking for a timeout? And we can start with Dave, if you want to start with that one.
Yeah, okay. Context and working in. So I have different reasons and different thinking behind calling timeouts in general, depending on if I was working with, say, senior professional players versus developing junior players. And just so what I mean by that is, in a performance context, your goal is to win. That's it. So your timeouts, your choice of when to use a timeout is governed by your reasoning for timeout is you're trying to win. So you're trying to change the momentum of the game. You're trying to stop an opponent, gain momentum, or you're trying to keep momentum yourself. So it's really geared about winning, and that would be the content of the timeout would be geared around how do we win. Whereas if I was working with junior athletes, I might have different. That might be sometimes my reasoning, but I might have different thoughts about draw their attention to something. Or so the goal is not always to win; it's to help them develop. So I think those two different. It's a continuum, isn't it? But I think that would be the first thing I'd mention. And then the other thing is, I probably should check this before I came on the call, but in basketball, you typically have 5 of your own timeouts, first quarter, and 2 in the final quarter. And then obviously,
you have as a coach that can support performance. And I was sort of reflecting upon it, and do I separate that performance tool, the timeout, from the way in which I coach, the way in which I create environments, the way in which I prepare players, the way in which I go about trying to, empower those players? And I think, do you know what? I think in times gone past, I probably have. I'm not sure that the timeout environment that I've created previously reflects the kind of, I suppose, interactions between players and coach and players that actually I'm trying to aspire for. So it's certainly got me thinking. And one of the things, I suppose, where I'm going with this is, what is your performance environment look like if you're in a performance environment? What does your development environment look like? What do you want it to look like? What is your coaching philosophy and the way in which that supports how you go about using something like a timeout? So I think I've been guilty, certainly in the past, of separating it and almost being quite reactive with it. I totally echo some of Dave's points around where you might use it and when you might use it in terms of momentum, trying to disrupt momentum, regain momentum, build momentum, etc. There's probably key moments in games. Historical trends is something that I know over being in a national league for 14 years against certain clubs, certain things will happen. And I want to use timeouts in a particular way. But one of the sort of directions I want to take with timeouts is being a little bit more proactive around them and doing some research into timeouts in handball, basketball, volleyball as well, and futsal. Not a huge amount in futsal that I could find, but it was really interesting noticing the trends 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after a timeout. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's something we can come on in a little bit. But yeah, so just to echo some of Dave's points, but yes, trying to be a little bit more proactive with my timeouts, trying to consider the environment and the way in which I want to interact with my players and vice versa, as well as some of those ideas around momentum, historical reasons, physical reasons, potentially, key moments of a game.
Thank you, Sean. Xavi, obviously, having passed a big part of your career coaching at high performance level, Champions League and European competitions with both club and national teams, I'm sure you have a valuable input on this one as well, to building some bridges with Sean and Dave and their experiences. So, what are the key aspects that inform your decisions when calling for timeouts?
Well, for us, there are one thing that is key, no? That is the match plan. The match plan is key concept for us that we prepare before the match. Of course, the match plan is what we think that can happen during the match, what we must make to try to win the match, which answers we will give during the match, depending what will make the opponent. And about your question about the timeout, I think that everything depends of the match plan. No, when everything is going good, there are not sense from our point of view to change the match. The opposite, because it's to give one advantage to the opponent, to give chance to reorganize all the game again. For us, we ask the timeout in two ways. No, the first thing is when the match is not going. The match plan is not going good. Can be from the tactical point of view, something is going wrong, and our answers are not the correct. So we must break and to organize again from the tactical point of view the match. And the other way is that from the psychological point of view, it's not going good. We have players that are going down. They are nervous, and we must break. We must stop the match in that moment. This will be one timeout. No, the other timeout that we consider is at the end of every period. In handball, we have two periods of 30 minutes everyone, and it's to prepare the last situation. Can be in the first period to take one advantage of one goal that maybe is the goal that decides the match, or can be one timeout at the end of the match in the case that is needed to win the match or to pass one for one qualification or something like that. So that will be the two kinds of timeouts that we use at least in our team.
Thank you, Xavi. Obviously, you've all mentioned the context of your specific sport, and that it's a major factor in underpinning your decisions to call timeouts. I would transport you, and I would start with you, Xavi. I would transport you to the specific timeout context, drawing on your experiences. What are, in your opinion, the best ways to make that 1 minute to make the most possible impact on the players? Ways you use to communicate and to pass your message that you believe are going to cause more, are going to be effective, essentially.
Well, a little bit like I told you before, no? I think that I will repeat during all the time, but I think that this is the key of the timeouts from my point of view, no? It's everything depends of the match plan, no? That is clear is that you must prepare, or we prepare at least the timeouts, depending. Of course, today it's much easier than 10, 15 years ago about the scouting. We have a lot of information about the rivals. We can predict how will be the match, how will be the answers, how will play the rivals, because today it's so easy to have information about the rivals, and it's difficult that the rival can surprise to you. No, in the same way, at least in handball, it's difficult that you can surprise the rival. There are not time during the week when you play, when you travel, when you play two competitions in a week. There are not time to train and to change the game of one team. It's I think that it's very, very difficult or even impossible, at least in our sport. That is clear is that.
Shall we break in as well, or is it just me?
Did it disappear?
One time out, our timers are 1 minute, while the players. So finally, the timeout is 40 seconds. It's you must have so clear. You hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. I say that the timeouts are so short. It's around 40-45 seconds, and we must prepare what will be, because there are no time to think what you will say. No. I think that with the information that you take before in the scouting and you of the rival and the preparation of the match plan, it's so predictable how will be your reactions depending how is going the match. You can know which problems you
Xavi, we are losing you.
have during the match. So it's for us important to prepare this brief depending the how is now.
Yeah, we're sometimes you go off, but now you're back again.
Okay, so finally to resume, to sum up, it's important I think to prepare the timeouts depending of the scouting of the rival and the knowledge that today with the technology we can get.
Thank you, Xavi. Dave, what kind of strategies do you use to promote or to cause a bigger impact on your players when you ask for a timeout? What are you looking for to make the message pass in a fluent and effective way?
So we're really lucky because we get 2 minutes. So fully 100% more than you guys do. So there's loads more you can do in 2 minutes, of course. No, I'm joking. There's nothing you can do in 2 minutes. I'd say I was thinking about this, not this particular question, but the question causes me to think to something I thought through a bit earlier, which is I think it's to do with consistency. And what I mean by that is there's a reason why you've called the timeout. And that might be, let's say, for example, the reason is to make a tactical change. So it might be for me, we're playing a man-to-man defence and we're going to switch to zone defence, something like that. So the reason for the timeout is a tactical one. My message then has to be really clear, and it has to be tactical. And if I start to mix up, for me, if I mix up the tactical and the psychological and physical, there's a potential loss of message there. So I'm trying to make sure the message meets the reason why I've called the timeout, and I'm not diluting that or mixing it up with other potential messages. And as Xavi said, I mean, 1 minute, 2 minutes, you've probably got, you've got the chance to make 1 or maximum 2 points, so anything more than that, it's going to get lost. And then the other bit of consistency is probably emotional. So my emotional tone should reflect or be consistent with the message. So I might want to bollock my players. It might be a psychological reason I've called the timeout because I don't think they're working hard enough. My emotional tone then is going to be, up. It's going to be scold. It's going to be, teacups flying kind of thing, which is fine. But that's to fit the message. And too often I see coaches getting very emotional in a timeout, getting very, loud and aggressive when they try to deliver a tactical message, which needs nuance and calmness, And then the last thing will be the information. So I might not always do this, but I'll probably want to communicate information in the timeout. And as Xavi said, again, like particularly at high performance level now, you will have stats. We've usually got live stats. And so can I use that information, the statistic that hits the message that completes my reason in an emotional way that's consistent with, so there's a sort of nice line of consistency in reason, message, emotional tone and information that if all that comes together nicely, I think, and is coherent, that's when you've got the most impact, the most bang for your buck. And then the only other thing I'd add is I did do a bit of research a couple of years ago with a basketball club. It wasn't just about timeouts, but it's about emotional, psychological momentum. And one of the things that the players talked about a lot was the focus, being a future focus. So again, I don't know if you notice, but sometimes when you're in a timeout as a player or a coach, they can be mixing or jumping back and forth about it. So a coach can get angry about what they've just seen. And they can use the entire timeout to talk about what just happened. And the whole point of the timeout is that you're trying to change something. So the focus should always be on the future and not in the past. And I think that's the only other thing I've mentioned that, again, gets mixed up often in timeouts, that people will jump about between something they didn't like and they're wasting time now because that's gone. It's in the past. You can't do anything about that. You focus on the future. That's something I see a lot of coaches they like to call the timeout and then dwell on what just happened. And
Thank you, Dave. I would, Sean, before your reply, I would ask you to draw on the conclusions. You were saying at the start that you read a bit about the impact on the pre-5 minutes and post-5 minutes. Maybe if you could clarify us a bit more on that, would be helpful.
And it kind of links to some of the intervention strategies that, as I was reflecting on, that sometimes I adopt. So basically what some of the research was, there was a piece of research into, handball was one, and a piece of research into volleyball. And it was basically saying 5 minutes before X team calls a timeout, that team was up 0.62, 5 minutes before. When they called the timeout, they were minus 0.59. The 5 minutes post, they'd only made a slight recovery to minus 0.52. So that was a series of handball games in a particular country with particular context. So, you know, don't take that for read.
Yeah.
But what interested me was, what are we doing as coaches in that 5 minutes before then? What are we doing, and how are we understanding the game state? How are we understanding the behaviours of our players? And are they, as something happens where the game is switching to momentum of the other team, are they behaving in a way that we want them to? Or are they waiting for us as coaches to call that time out because that's what they're used to? In situations that we don't necessarily have to use the timeout perhaps when we ordinarily would. And it's just thinking a little bit more proactive about our observation skills as coaches. However, if we do see those trends, then we need to act, and we might need to use our timeout. I think framing is really important. I think the ability to frame within your training sessions in terms of, can you know, if we've got a minute or if we've got 2 minutes in basketball, are we skilled enough to concisely put across our point, and understanding not only why we're taking a timeout, but also how we're going to present or provide that information? Are we addressing the whole team? Are we addressing an individual? Are we addressing something tactically related to a pair or a unit or whatever it may be? Because we've only got 60 seconds. And certainly from my experiences in that competition arena, there's all sorts going on. Players are grabbing for water bottles. Players are having a quick chat with the physio because maybe someone picked up a niggle. Another coach might be saying something to my ear because they're watching the other timeout of the opposition and seeing the behaviours of the opposition timeout. There's all sorts going on. So I guess if we're not practicing these situations or framing environments in which to practice these situations, when we start thinking about interventions, they're not necessarily going to look smooth without that little bit of pre-thinking, about that pre-planning, as Xavi said earlier. So yeah, I think that game state, understanding your players, understanding where the opposition is, and understanding the why and how alongside what you're going to say is really important.
Thanks, Sean. You just led us quite softly to another area that I would like to explore with you, and that is your session design. So when you're planning, say, you set your weekly sessions, your microcycles, mesocycles, macrocycles, you include set scenarios on your sessions that will, say, prepare the players for that moment of pressure where you need to pass a clear message. Obviously, you will be practicing it yourself as well, but what kind of tasks do you create within your session design that would enable players to understand better the messages you're going to pass on the timeout, and would replicate those moments of pressure with the noise, with, you know, the tiredness, with the willingness to go for a bottle of water or to speak to the physio, as you just mentioned, and turn everything more effective in the competitive moment. So does anyone wants to start replying? Any three of you? I'm happy.
Yeah, happy to kick off with a few thoughts. I think one of the things we try to do is provide opportunities in training where particular parts of sessions, it's a performance, it's an execution phase, it's a place in which the players have got control of those situations. As part of that, it might be that we have some kind of free team competition or free team format around a particular session, allowing that third team to have a given set time to review something, to look at something, to have a timeout with the coach. And I suppose that's the opportunities where you're then able to start to, I suppose, add to the framework of what does your timeout want to look like? Is it coach led? Is it athlete led? I know Alan Keane at the Reading Rockets talks a lot about athlete first, athlete last, and that's quite different and unique. And trying to again use the eyes of the 12, 14 players, whatever we've got on court, alongside and with our own 2 or 3 sets of eyes, maybe as a coaching team. And I think that's really important. So I think it's about creating those moments and those opportunities at full intensity. I think there's something between a chat and a conversation as well. If we're just allowing the players in that training to just talk around something and not come out with any shared understanding, and we don't set a little bit of a framework, we're in danger that they're all going to come back onto court that 60 seconds later, not aligned. So I think one of the things that we've been talking a lot about is turning those chats where you've got only a minute or 2 and turning them into really meaningful conversations that we can check for understanding and we can check for impact when they go back onto court. So those would be some of the, I suppose, some of the environmental conditions that we want to wrap around a particular practice or a particular session to try and draw some of those behaviours out of the players.
Thank you, Sean. Xavi, you want to carry on?
Yeah, in our case, in our context in Humble, first of all, I would like to say that we have the option to ask maximum 3 timeouts per match. This is very important question, because at least 2 of these 3 timeouts are asked in the last minute of every period. So that means that at least 67% almost of the timeouts are asked in this period. That means that there are a lot of situations. There are at least 2 situations per match that in matches that were in Humble, a lot of times when the teams are equal, the difference can be 1 goal, where this timeout is really important, can decide the match. So this is one thing that we must consider seriously, because 1 match is the limit to win or to lose, to qualify or not, to be champion or be the second, no, gold medal or nothing, or the loser, let's say. This is the first thing that I would like to say. The second thing is as much important and can decide one match, one title, can decide the success. So I think that this is very important to practice. To practice these situations that are much important. This is like the goalkeeper in Humble, like I suppose also even can be more now in futsal, where the goalkeeper can go out and play like player. So we think that the goalkeeper is very important, but a lot of coaches they don't dedicate as much time to the goalkeeper. We want that he saves a lot, but we don't dedicate time. No, so it's not sense from this point of view. So in this way, I think that it's important to dedicate time to work these timeouts. It's true that, for example, sometimes you have time, sometimes you don't have times because of the matches. But the important is, for example, in our case, that we dedicate a lot of time to prepare situations in different timing. For example, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 5 seconds to the end of the match, and for two things. First of all, to try to finishing with 1 shoot.
Xavi, we just lost you again.
If we don't shoot, it's impossible to score.
Okay, you got it.
Now,
yeah,
I say that we train with 2 targets. First, to shoot. To finish the situation, to shoot. If it's possible to score, of course, always. But if we don't shoot, for sure we don't score. So we train different situations. We train always with a score, with a chrono, in different timings, because when you can ask timeout, sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's 10, 15, depends also of the rival, no? Because not always you have the ball to ask timeout. And the second target is to control the timing, to play and finish the situation when we have less than 5 seconds, to don't give chance to the rivals to play the contra and score, no? And I think that this is one thing that speaking seems easy, but to control all these situations with this pressure, not all the players are used to make it, or not all the players knows how to make it. And I think that this is one of the things that it's important. It's important to make it. And of course, I think that absolutely everything you can train. So I think that is one of the aspects that we train a lot, because we think that it's really important, because one goal can decide one title.
Thank you, Xavi. Dave, do you want to weigh in, please?
Yeah, I'd echo what both Sion and Xavi have said. I think it's important to practice. I think it's important to create situations where players get an opportunity to practice, calling time out themselves, detecting the change in momentum in a game, feeling that, and then recognising there's a change that needs to be made. And then also, as Xavi was saying about practicing, very clear scenarios. So what happened? Again, very similar in basketball. If we've got 12 seconds left and we call a timeout, we want that play, and we're on offense. We want to be taking a shot with maximum 2 seconds left, because if we leave 3 seconds on the clock, they've got a chance to go the other way. So we need to practice that, and we need to practice that under those conditions as far as you can. Just to give you an example, one thing I used to do with some success in the professional context where I've worked. So we would do that, but based on very real price scenarios. So there was a game, for example, where we lost. We were basically playing the league leaders and at home, and we were 12 points up with 4 minutes left. Now, you should never lose a game, obviously, from 12 up, 4 minutes left, but we did. And I sort of knew that we were going to do. I could feel it. I could feel they were going to come back. I could feel that we were going to cave, and it was horrific. It was one of the most worst emotional experiences of my coaching career. Anyway, I addressed that with the players. So the following practice, we addressed that with the players, and we spoke about the emotions. What did they feel? And then we basically spent the entire practice. We were fortunate because we've got the big electronic scoreboard and things. It was exactly 4 minutes 21 seconds was the time remaining. So I put 4:21 back on the clock, and we played a series of games where we effectively replayed. And there was one condition, which was the team behind. So if I